The night race at Bristol, one of the highlights of the NASCAR season. There was plenty of action in this one, from a champion foil to a shootout between one of the youngest and most experienced stars in the sport.
This is one of the toughest tickets in NASCAR, and for the 55th consecutive time, it is a sellout here at the Bristol Motor Speedway.
It's just amazing everything that's going on out here. It's just an electric atmosphere, and as a driver, you're just so jacked up because you know this is your opportunity to win the night race at Bristol.
It's going to be a two-car race, it looks like.
4 laps to go. Mark Martin to the inside of Kyle Busch, who's the leader of this race.
White flag this time by, out of turn 2. Mark Martin trying to get there. Kyle Busch.
Underneath you, Mark Martin's trying to go for the lead. Kyle Busch to the outside.
He's going to have to really get a bite. I think he's going to have to hit him, guys, if he's going to win this.
And out of turn 4, Kyle Busch will win it at Bristol, Tennessee.
Kyle Busch gets his first Sprint Cup win since Richmond back in May. He's the first driver to sweep both races at the world's fastest half mile, Bristol, since Big Brother Kurt did it in 2003. Making his 1,000th career start from the pole, Mark Martin led the most laps but finished second, while for a second straight race, Jimmy Johnson led at the final pit stop but didn't win. We'll discuss their nights and a whole lot more next on the Monday Roundtable edition of NASCAR Now.
NASCAR Now is presented by the Home Depot.
And from the Home Depot Garage Studio, we welcome you to the Lane Choice Was Everything edition of the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable. Bristol had a lot of what it usually does: sparks flying, fenders bending, some good racing to the finish, and we kick that around for the next hour from the Home Depot Garage Studio with our roundtable panel: Ray Evernham, Randy LaJoy, and Ricky Craven. Overall impressions of the Bristol race on Saturday night were?
I thought it was a great race. Again, too wide for the lead. You know, you couldn't do that at Bristol. No bumping and banging. I thought it was a great race.
We didn't see a bump and run. Mark Martin is the cleanest race car driver out there.
Great racing, a little bit different with a new track in that the guys were choosing the middle of the racetrack. You want to pass me, you got to go to the bottom. Makes the track narrower. Most drivers couldn't get it done on the bottom.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to talk about all of those things as we review the event, but I want to start our review with the finish. A late caution flag and a red flag set up a final 4-lap scramble to the checkers between two of the sport's best. Kyle Busch restarting outside, Mark Martin inside, and Ricky outside was the place to be.
It was the place to be, and Kyle, with a couple laps to go, I think gave Mark that inside lane, said, if you can beat me, you're going to have to do it on the bottom, and it wasn't going to happen, folks.
Looking at all 4 of those final laps, Mark stuck his nose underneath a couple times, but just could not make it stick.
And the bottom lane is a quicker lane if you can use the whole racetrack coming off the corner. Since he could not use the whole racetrack coming off the corner, Kyle had the momentum.
And Mark, being a clean driver and champion that he is, he chose not to do something that would take both of those guys out. He had his nose in there, but he could not get to the throttle hard enough safely without to make the pass without taking Kyle out.
So here they come to the white flag. Mark hung with Kyle for 3 of the 4 laps, but he just couldn't make it work. And Kyle given that room on the bottom, but using the outside lane to his advantage. Now he shuts the door in the final corners, and Kyle Busch runs to the checkered flag for the win at Bristol, completing the season sweep at the world's fastest half mile. A huge victory as this chase race closes in for Kyle Busch and his Joe Gibbs Racing 18 team.
Mark Martin, you know, what a class act. I mean, he deserved to win this race, and I'm sorry he came home in second. I know how he feels, but man, I drove as hard as I could, and he had a chance. He could have done it, but he didn't. You know, he raced me clean, and we didn't have the best car tonight, but we had a car capable enough of doing it.
I wanted to get him, but he gave me room. Wasn't any use in, you know, we were racing hard for it. I got in under him. He gave me plenty of room, and it's a good thing because I got sideways, slid right up, and it's a good thing that he didn't crowd me or we'd have both wrecked.
Mark, this is Bristol. You could have used the bumper. Why didn't you?
I don't think he would have on me. He gave me room. I just didn't get it done. He gave me room to pass him, and I couldn't do it.
Interesting to me, something that I took away from Saturday night's race that I'll make the statement on and let you guys react and discuss. The margin between winning and not winning these Sprint Cup races anymore is so small. The key to the Bristol race turned on other teams' strategy on the final pit stop. Michael Waltrip's team did not pit. Ryan Newman's team on the final pit stop took just right side tires. So even though Mark's crew got him off pit road as the first car with 4 fresh tires, he had to restart third, and only the leader gets lane choice. When you're restarting third, you must restart in the inside lane no matter what. And that was the difference between Kyle and Mark.
Well, and that's why you get paid the big bucks to sit in that chair, because that was very observant on your part. Hadn't really thought about that or how Kyle got that preferred lane. But these cars are so close that Kyle's car was maybe not as strong as Mark's, but he could use the whole racetrack. And when you're out front, you can keep that momentum up. And Mark just couldn't do it, even though his car was faster.
It was the key. And something I saw there that I've seen in Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Jimmy Johnson, if you give talent the opportunity, they seize the moment. And Kyle Busch seized the moment. You know, once he got to the lead, he wasn't going to lose that race.
So let's talk about the bump and run. Mark had the opportunity. A lot of guys have at Bristol. Put the bumper to the guy they're trying to get around. He chose not to. Why do you think?
Just Mark Martin. I run second to him at Darlington and Rockingham. He come and found me the following week. He goes, "Thank you for running me clean." And that's something that, you know, I learned a long time ago. My dad taught me, you drive a guy the way he drives you. And Mark drove him clean, and Kyle obviously has drove Mark clean.
Randy knows that. I know that. Kyle Busch knew that. And I'll tell you something, that if had it been another driver, Kyle might have operated a little differently. But the fact is, he understands that Mark is a class act. He's a professional. We've had 1,000 times to see this, folks. Mark's raced that way his whole career.
And these guys are right. You know, as somebody that's been an owner and a crew chief, you know that Mark Martin is going to race your car clean. And if he has a problem with you, he's going to come over and discuss it with you, because he's not afraid to do that. But Mark is a consummate professional, and he is the example of how you should race somebody side by side in close quarters.
Now, but let's also turn that around. Kyle Busch, you heard Mark say on the tape from Saturday night also, Kyle left me room. Why did Kyle leave so much room for Mark?
Because he respects Mark, and somehow he's earned that, and Mark certainly earned it, but I think that Kyle has earned it with Mark also. Mark said that he didn't think Kyle would have done it back, and I agree with that. And I got to say this, and Randy, you can back me up on this. Drivers have memories of elephants. They remember everything that's important to them. You never forget the guy that did you wrong.
Well, you know, that's another thing but Kyle Busch knew that if he let Mark Martin get to his right rear quarter, he was done. He was going to get pinned to the inside.
Yes.
So Kyle says, I'm going to stay in the middle groove to the high groove. The car has plenty of momentum. It has great stick up there, and he got it done.
We talked about how Mark handled the last laps. You just wanted to make a brief mention, Ricky, of how Mark handled the first lap.
Yeah. And this is something that stuck with me my whole career, and that Mark can adjust to a car as well as anybody, obviously with the help of his crew. The beginning of the race, nearly takes out the outside car. He slipped to third. And you know what? Instead of panicking and saying, look, I got to tighten this thing up, I'm going to wreck, he goes to work. He changes his line. Once he got into open track, he used every inch of racetrack to evaluate what he had, because guess what? When you're in the lead, you have the whole racetrack. And he didn't tighten the car up and go backward. He got better as the race went on.
There was probably a half a dozen guys in that field. If they had a chance to start on the pole like that, they would have been the first caution, would have been the first corner.
They got my attention.
He's got an incredible advantage on those guys. Think about it. He's got all those years of experience of being 50, but his mind and his body are still 25. We could be seeing Mark Martin win races at 70.
There you go. So what a clutch performance for both Kyle Busch and Mark Martin, where the race to the chase is concerned. Kyle went from 70 points out to just 34 points behind 12th place. Mark went from just 12 points in to now 60 points ahead of 13th place with 2 races to go. That's not a great pad for Mark, but it's a whole lot better than just 12 points were.
Yeah, it's really big. I think it makes a statement. And you know what? I think it makes the biggest statement, the guys competing against him for the chase. I think they're back on their heels a little bit because of that.
Now, I'll add this. Nobody's opinion on the bump and run really matters but Mark's. But second guessing is what we do in sports. So our ESPN Sports Nation poll asks if you think Mark should have bumped Kyle out of the way for the win. Log on to ESPN.com's NASCAR page.
How do you think that's going to end?
Well, you know, I think I know how it's going to end, but that's why we ask. All right, so next topic, one that got away. For a second straight race at Bristol, Jimmy Johnson came down pit road for the final pit stop leading. Did not come out with the lead. This was the final stop, and watch the right rear.
This very seldom happens. I mean, something happened when he took off. When that thing dropped and he took off, he felt like he had a square tire on the back of this thing. Just started screaming, guys, we got a huge problem.
The wobbling wheel forces Johnson to return to the pits a lap later, drops into 21st.
The last 2 weeks, we've given away a couple trophies and 20 points now, so just disappointed. I mean, we've got fast cars, just some weird things have been happening. We got to clean that stuff up to be able to be competitive in the chase. And I can see it; it's right there for us. We were so close to having what we need, but just a couple things for the last few weeks have hurt us.
And just to clarify, at the time it dropped Jimmy to 21st. He did come back to finish 8th. They don't call it the money stop for nothing, huh?
No, and it's very rare that team makes mistakes. But if you watch what happened there, it looked like the Jackman got a little bit off cue, dropped the car before the right rear tire was on. And let's watch it here. He pulls the right rear tire off. They'll hand the other new right rear tire in. The Jackman's looking at the front. He's looking at the rear. He's back and forth. Watch the front guy done, rear guy's not done. He's got to pick up some lug nuts. Impossible to get that tire tight when the car's on the ground. So they had to go back and come in. And again, this team just doesn't make those mistakes. They've got to just sit, talk about it, calm down, catch your breath, and get back on the rhythm. They've had fast cars, like Jimmy said, could have won the race. Can't make mistakes like that if they're going to win the championship.
Super Bowl quarterbacks, Major League World Series pitchers, champion pitchers, are leaders. They always have that ability to rally the team, and I really appreciated Jimmy Johnson's comments. It didn't get personal. He just stated a fact. We lost 20 points, 2 trophies. I'm concerned about it, but we can fix it. And I think that really stuck out to me.
Despite what happened to Jimmy Saturday night, for both he and Jeff Gordon, and in fact, despite what happened to Jeff Saturday night with a rather poor finish, both clinched their spot in the chase for the Sprint Cup. For Jimmy, his 6th consecutive time in the chase, and for Jeff, number 5. By the way, that clinching, step 1 for Johnson in his try for history, make the chase. Check that one off. Still to come, some of those on the bubble for making the chase had tough nights in Thunder Valley. We will review it in a moment. And the championship leader, Tony Stewart, he certainly had a night he'd like to forget. Hello? Is anyone there? Hello? This car's not running. Help? We'll talk about Tony Stewart's night in a moment. On the other side, some guys like Ryan Newman had great nights. Ryan capped a 4-race weekend with strategy and a strong result Saturday. That's next on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable.
NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot. Visit HomeDepot.com. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. And in part by Chase. Introducing Chase Sapphire Card. Unlimited rewards, unbelievable experiences.
So here's what the race to the chase bubble picture looked like entering Bristol. Juan Pablo Montoya and Casey Kane were each ahead of the cutoff by triple digits, while Michigan winner Brian Vickers was just 12 points out before Bristol. 4 of the drivers on the bubble had some troubles in Thunder Valley. After running in the top 15 most all race, Juan Pablo Montoya begins to slip back after contact with around 45 to go. Critically, he doesn't pit under caution at lap 457 when the yellow waves. Then, shortly after that, like 7 laps later, he has a flat tire and has to pit under green. He ends up finishing 25th. Clint Boyer ran solidly but got swept into 2 incidents, not of his own making, in the final 61 laps. First getting damaged when he got clipped by Reed Sorensen, and then in this big smash-up with Michael Waltrip, and Clint wasn't happy.
With Clint Boyer obviously disappointed. Clint, can you sum up the frustrations of a night at Bristol?
Pretty frustrated.
Okay, so then Casey Kane started 29th and finished 28th. 3 laps down, and Casey at the end of the night pretty much said there wasn't much to say. They just missed it.
We had a terrible car tonight. We just screwed up. I screwed up during practice, and we didn't bring a great setup, and we just got beat pretty bad tonight.
On to Brian Vickers, who actually had a decent night but lost some ground in the bubble. Vickers got 2 free passes during the race, missed getting major damage right there in that crash, and still managed to finish 12th, but again lost a little ground to the cut line. A look at how much very shortly. Besides Kyle Busch and Mark Martin, 3 bubble drivers helped their cause at Bristol. Greg Biffle started 2nd, led the opening 65 laps, said they didn't adjust on it early enough, fell behind, rallied back, wound up finishing in 4th position. And Ryan Newman, who says his car got off early, but they worked on it. He was running 11th at the final pit stop when crew chief Tony Gibson made the call for just a 2-tire change. Newman was first off pit road, restarted 2nd, wound up in 6th position. By the way, the wrap-up on Newman's 4-race Bristol weekend, he ran 1,024 laps around the world's fastest half-mile. Wow.
That's enough.
Apparently so. The top 10 finishes in the Truck and Cup Series races. No truth to the rumor that he set a new record for sports drink consumption. Back to the Bubble Boys for just a minute. Matt Kenseth, the other guy who helped his cause at Bristol a little, started 5th, said they ran a lot better than he thought they would, but got stuck in the inside lane on restarts a lot and said that was the toughest thing. Still, Matt wound up finishing in 10th position. So, back to the bubble. After Bristol, every bubble driver saw his rank change, but most importantly, the point totals relative to the bubble changed. Kane lost 53. Montoya lost 44. Vickers lost 27. Boyer lost 53. While Biffle gained 33. Newman gained 18. Kenseth gained just a couple. So, first topic for our second guessing, Juan Pablo Montoya and why they didn't pit there.
Again, I don't know. You know, when you've got to know your car, know your driver. Certainly when a car that had run that good and that solid all night long drops back that fast, it should tell you that something's wrong. Don't know what was going on with the radio communication, but when something dropped back that fast and you've got a chance to pit under caution, to me, you need to pit and take a look at it.
I have empathy for him because it's obvious now, right? But in his situation, he wants to preserve the finish. Believe me, the points had a lot to do with it. But when a car drifts that quickly, you're the only guy that can make that call. I think that he needed to take control of that situation, hit pit road.
Let's talk about the pressure some of these guys on the bubble are under. You talked about, Ricky, the points being a factor there and maybe Montoya's decision not to bring his car to pit road. Can you describe in a practical way how the bubble, these points affect the guy when he's inside the car or on top of the pit box?
Well, two things. Number one, you go in knowing your circumstances, but it doesn't help when you look up and Kyle Busch is leading. That has an effect, doesn't it? And when you look up and say, look, he's leading, and you start calculating in your head, you say, I can't afford a bad day. I knew this chance might come, and I think it compounds the situation because a rational decision or a logical decision from a car dropping 8 or 10 spots that quickly is, I got a problem.
Did I just hear somebody involved in racing describe decisions as rational and logical?
Sorry about that.
Never mind.
No, certainly not him. Don't look at me. I will tell you, from a communication standpoint, and we hear over and over again the importance of communication. Driver, crew chief, team. Pressure sometimes affects people in a different way. It makes people maybe get a little introverted and not communicate as much as they would. You know, pressure, sometimes a team can portray a negative image, negative outcome, and that's not good. Guys have got to be positive, they've got to be open, they've got to be happy, and they've got to communicate. Because that communication, if you miss that setup at a place like Bristol, you have a bad night.
You look at Clint Boyer. He was frustrated as all get out. Why was he frustrated? You know, Kevin Harvick tried to do him a favor. Kevin got into him, and then Kevin gave him some space to straighten himself up. Well, Kevin got run over from behind, and then Kevin got wrecked. It got Boyer even more wrecked. So that's why he was frustrated. But that's just Bristol. That's something that Bristol does. If you try to be tentative at Bristol, you're going to get run over. You cannot slow down at Bristol. And you got to stay in the gas.
And Randy, there's something else about Bristol is you cannot occupy the entire race in the middle of the pack. Yep. And he spent most of the night right there in the middle of the pack, and that always catches up with you. If not in front, from behind.
So look at the bubble picture as it came away from Bristol and, of course, the week off this week for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series before we go to Atlanta. Coming up next, there were plenty of bumps, bangs, and spins Saturday night. We talked about a couple of them in general, but we'll look at who messed with who in a minute. Plus, look at some other notable performances from Thunder Valley. Can you say good day, mate? That and more on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable.
Welcome back to NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot.
Picking apart Saturday night's NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race from Bristol with Ray Evernham, Randy LaJoie, and Ricky Craven. 11 cautions for 76 laps on Saturday night, the usual variety of bumps, bangs, and spins. And I think we as race fans always like these wrecks to be somebody's fault. So let's look at the wrecks and figure out whose fault they were. Let's start early. Joey Logano.
Well, this is the second wreck. Well, you don't consider a wreck when he just hits the fence and there's no caution. He got stuck in the fence early on trying to pass Dave Blaney, who was going backwards in a hurry. And then you see come off the corner, he feathers the throttle,
and he hits it. I'll be more specific. Reed Sorensen.
All right. There we go. Another look. Whoops.
Okay, I'll say that. Reed Sorensen.
There you go. And yeah, I agree with you. No yellow flag. It doesn't count as a wreck. So the first little wall contact was no problem. Lap 163. Bobby Labonte in the 96 car gets spun.
Got to be the 11th fault.
This looks one way, but it's another. It's another way. Now we're going to go the old compressed air theory.
Okay.
If you show the other view, he never really touched him, but he got so close, I think the air compressed and pushed his bump up.
Boy, you'd have a hard time convincing Bobby Labonte right then.
The throttle, too much throttle.
Labonte was running 16th at the time. He wound up finishing 36th after the incident. We move further ahead. Kevin Harvick, Sam Hornish, and more wreck.
You can't see it here, but everybody, they're all slowing down. There's a wreck in front of them, and these guys are all just running over each other. But the wreck started in front of these guys.
There's Kurt Busch, there's Hornish, there's Casey Mears. Vickers barely gets away with that.
At some point tonight, we have to blame the track for a wreck, so I'm blaming the track.
Just Bristol?
Yeah.
And bang. That's not good.
That's not good.
That was McMurray in contact with Harvick there, and I believe it was Sorensen in contact with Clint Boyer. So, 43 to go. Whose fault is this?
Water.
Now, wait a minute, driver. As a crew chief, that's why we put those things up in the front there. With all that water coming out of there, you guys know that's not good for track.
That's like a gauge.
That's
We don't look at
fault
it.
right there. When there's steam coming out, that water's going somewhere, pal.
All right, I couldn't let that one go. 9 to go, the Michael Waltrip Clint Boyer wreck.
Well, that's another tire rubs don't get any better, so that rubbed for 3 or 4 laps before it blew out.
Martin Truex is behind him.
There's the contact, and that was what got that tire rub, right?
Whose fault is that, Rick?
That's adding insult to injury when you make contact with your car you own.
And then Boyer gets tapped from behind as well. All right, so somebody's fault, right? It's always got to be somebody's fault.
Come on, Ricky, whose fault was it?
We're certainly not going to blame Clint Boyer for that.
I thought you guys said it was Michael Waltrip's fault.
Yeah.
All right, why not? So those are some guys that had some tough nights at Bristol, and it's nice we can laugh about it, although they probably weren't all that happy. This guy who was really happy after the race, Marcos Ambrose. What a great night for him, huh?
Awesome. I mean, this guy shows every week that he's humble, he wants to be here, but he deserves to be here. I mean, to run that good through traffic at Bristol all night long, he's shown he's got much more depth than a road racer.
Marcos was a pretty happy boy after the race. Good day, mate.
But here I am with 8 laps to go, and I've got Mark Martin and Kyle Busch, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Greg Buffer. They're all running for the chase. They're all legend drivers, and what am I doing here? I shouldn't be in this group, but you know, just a really great day for us. We're a brand new team. It's the first year in the Cup Series, and to get my best over result on a wild Saturday night like we had tonight, it just feels great. And you know, we're really doing something, and I feel really proud of my team.
I'll talk more about Marcos in just a minute. First, another notable night for the championship leader, Tony Stewart. First, radio troubles had brought him to pit road, cost him a lap early. Then he gets caught for speeding, trying to stay ahead of the pace car off pit lane at lap 137. Then he stalls with electrical problems, and the championship leader ends up 11 laps down in 33rd. Wow. Ambrose.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm going to lean on Ray a little bit here. A lot of drivers go fast in races, but they don't always finish the job. And the way Marcos Ambrose did this weekend, I think speaks to his ability to break down the corners, break down the racetrack. And Ray, you know, you can run fast for the first 100 laps, but you're not going to finish in the top 5 unless that driver gives you feedback that you can help improve the car. And I think he's doing it.
And as both drivers know, that Bristol does not stay the same from start to finish. 500 laps there, especially in August. The more rubber that place takes, the more that track changes, and you've got to stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
And you guys each had a couple other noteworthy nights that you wanted to point out. Yours was an entire group.
Yeah, honestly, I look at how the Roush Fenway group was. I think that they weren't great, but they showed solid strength to keep those cars in the chase. I think that Jack's made some improvements there. You know, they had a good solid run with the 16, the 17, and the 26.
You know, I got to look at Dale Jr. You talk about confidence. He's been beat up hard all year long. They had a good run in Michigan. They come in here. He was a top 5 car. You know, at the end of that race, he got stuck on the bottom group and got shuffled back to 9th. But Junior, confidence, you better look out at Richmond. It's one of his favorite racetracks.
Yeah, I'm with you, Randy. And for me, it's Kurt Busch. You know, Kurt Busch came up through traffic at the beginning of the race like a lightning rod. And then he got in a wreck and bounced off at least 3 cars. This car's taking a lot of criticism, but it's resilient. He bounced off 3 cars, came back, and finished in the top 10.
Don't you wish they had those when you were driving?
I sure needed it, didn't I?
And for me, it was Denny Hamlin, who started 41st, got a flat tire, got a lap down, got it back, fought his way back through the pack, and came up with a top 5 finish at Bristol.
Yeah.
Wow.
It speaks to composure, doesn't it? Because there's plenty of opportunity to panic there, and he didn't.
Yep, so 41st to 5th. And again, Hamlin's not locked into the chase yet, so big performance for that team on Saturday night. So those some people we thought had noteworthy performances up in Thunder Valley. And up next on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable, we will talk to the crew chief of Saturday night's winning car. Steve Addington joins us to talk all about it. That's next when we continue.
Full Throttle is brought to you by Degree B12.
Through the midway and up the hill, they move toward NASCAR's most amazing arena, a little half-mile oval surrounded by an incredible 160,000-seat stadium, one of the circuit's smallest tracks, known for creating some of its wildest action.
This is Bristol. A lot of motion, a lot of intensity. Let's get it.
They call it the Coliseum of Collision, and we're going to turn them loose with a green flag. Biffle will lead the first lap and get those 5 bonus points.
All right, you got 5 points still down there.
Sounds like you're standing right on the front straightaway of Indy.
Can't hear you, Kenny, at all. This place is too loud. Check up. We got one up top and one.
Denny Hamlin is off the pace. It looks like he may have a tire going down.
Okay. Obviously, it's loose, but it's great.
We will pit, so you just got to be cautious when you go back out on your stickers, Jimmy.
Don't sign, roll. There you go.
Biffle will win the race off of pit road. Mark Martin second, gaining a spot.
No, one lane. And I hope you didn't cost us time. Damn it. Ready? Green.
Martin looking racy on the bottom of the racetrack, trying to sneak underneath the 16 of Biffle.
Yeah, they may have made an adjustment on that 5-car on the stop.
5 and the 2 are loose off, like they're leaving black marks every time, and yet driving away.
Whoa, how about that?
Good move. Well, I thought brothers.
What was that?
I think he thinks he shook your car at him.
Now Bush will try to get back into the throttle, but as he does so, Jimmy Johnson's going to fight to his outside.
Good job, bud. Straight and smooth.
5 right all the way around the racetrack. We're not going to finish. You son of a... Somebody got to do something. We're racing to get the pace, and our teammates, the hardest one around here racing.
Oh, this is risky, Mark.
Martin has been stuck behind the 9-car of Casey Kane, who is 2 laps down, and now Johnson will take the lead.
But you're the fastest car on the track. Doing a good job. They're wrecking here on the front.
Whoa, look at it, guys. Big stack up.
Kurt Busch gets turned, and he has got damage.
That's just beautiful.
This might be the final stop. We'll find out.
Turn in. Come on.
Wheel straight, but on right.
Go. Outside 1. That right rear's not on, guys. Damn it.
And that pit stop, what happened was Lugnut got stuck between the wheel and the hub.
I got better forward bite than anybody, but if I don't hit it right, man.
Kyle Busch and Mark Martin side by side in row 1.
Go get that 18.
Right now.
All right,
Here he comes.
He's going to hit him.
Out of turn 4, Kyle Busch will win it at Bristol, Tennessee.
That's awesome, buddy. 18 is not going down without a fight.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Well, Kyle Busch certainly does go full throttle at Bristol. Saturday's win his 6th at the track. He's finished 2nd, 1st, and 1st in the last 3 Cup races there. Mark Martin now the 8th driver in Cup history to score 250 top 5 finishes, while Tony Stewart's streak of consecutive lead lap runs ended at 18. The man who led the winning effort on Saturday night at Bristol, crew chief Steve Addington, joins us now from the Joe Gibbs Racing Shops in Huntersville, North Carolina. Steve, I'll use the word huge to describe that win for your race team. Would you agree with me?
Yes, Alan. It was a big shot in the arm for the 18 team. been struggling here lately with just getting Kyle the right balance. He needs to go fast through the corners, and we hit on a little bit of some stuff at Michigan, which I thought was a plus, and then, you know, had the incident with the sway bar getting locked up in the tube and falling back there at the end. But you know, I feel good with everybody putting their heads together and getting behind the 8-team here at Joe Gibbs Racing, and should have unloaded Atlanta pretty good.
Steve, to me, Saturday night, the key moment of the race was when your driver started outside of Mark Martin for the restart after that last pit stop when Mark wasn't able to get lane choice because of the other team's strategies. Would you agree with that, yes or no?
Yes, that was huge. The guys stepped up to the plate there on that last pit stop on pit road and busted off a great pit stop there, and that was a key to the race right there. I think those guys having a good pit stop and getting the track position that we needed.
You mentioned a little bit of the spell you went with, your team struggled through over the summer. As you stand today and you look at your program with 2 races to go into the chase and then hopefully for you the run for the championship, what are your strong points and what's the stuff you're still working on?
Just the intermediate tracks, for some reason, we've been off a little bit this year, or through the summer anyway, that we've changed some stuff, and me and Kyle sat down Monday night and talked about what he's feeling in the race cars, and, you know, the balance differences that he feels from where we were at the beginning of the season, from last season too, and has a really good feedback from him, and got to sit down and look at a lot of stuff. So that's our game plan going into Atlanta, is just rallying everybody here at Joe Gibbs Racing to get our intermediate program put back together to where we were at the beginning of the season and back into last season. Just some of the stuff that we had changed that, like I told Kyle, I said, you know, some of the stuff that you were saying in the car is the reason we changed and went into a different direction. So it was just communication and not getting the full story out of him, and me not getting a full understanding from what he was saying, but to sit down and really go through it and listen to him. I mean, we had a great talk. It was 2.5 hours long the other night, and it really helped me realize what he was saying about the race cars, and I hope that it feeds it over into our race cars when we get to Atlanta.
So just to kind of to recap and sum up there, you and Kyle basically talked about a lot of your communication and finding ways to make sure you were on the same page.
Yeah, well, just when you're at the racetrack and he's got a lot going on and you don't get to spend a whole lot of time with him. Like I told him, I said, we ran a practice on Saturday morning, and as soon as he gets out of the car, I've got like 2 or 3 minutes with him before he has to go to a driver's meeting for the nationwide side, and then he comes back, and now these guys are lining up for happy hour 20, 30 minutes before it's time to go on the racetrack. So you got to go get in the line, and you really don't have time to sit down and talk in between practices, and then we have a few minutes after the happy hour practice for him to get to driver's introductions for the nationwide race. And we just sat down, we've got a game plan for that from here on out, and we got an understanding that I need that sit down time with him for him to go run the nationwide race. I said, I don't care whether you win the race and you're happy or you wreck 15 people and are frustrated. I said, sometime when you get back to your motorhome, take 15 minutes or 5 hours, call me at 1 o'clock in the morning on, you know, Sunday morning, and I'll get up out of the bed and come over there and we'll sit down and talk and make sure that our game plan going into Sunday, that we've got the right information so we can make the right changes.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. So Steve, how does being this close in points and right on that cut line for the chase affect you and your team?
Well, I mean, right now, I don't like saying this, but being on the outside and chasing somebody is a lot easier for us, I think, than, you know, trying to be protective. I think that if you go in there and be protective, trying to save your spot in the points, that you're not going to be on your game. Right now, we've got to go race. It's just like going to Bristol. We had to go to Bristol and race and take what it was going to give us, and our performance was there. So I think that us going in, we know we've got to be a top 5 car or top 10 car when we leave Atlanta. So we can go in there and race hard, do our normal deal, and just be prepared to go in there and race for it.
The last question for you, Steve. There's no Sprint Cup race this weekend, the first time there's been any kind of a break in the second half of the schedule for a number of years. How does this help you, and is there any negative to it?
Well, that's like they said, you get the extra week to enjoy your win, and I said we got Sunday off to enjoy the win. We're back here focused on Atlanta and Richmond here. It started at 7 o'clock this morning. We started working on Atlanta and working on Richmond stuff. So I think that it's going to give us time to give my road guys a time to take a breath, just take a deep breath, get refocused for going to Atlanta a week from now, and just time for them to relax, because we've been working them to death. We did the 5 days at Pocono, left Pocono, went straight to Dover and tested, came back home, and then we went straight to Watkins Glen and we're there for 5 days. The guys were they're dragging, and it's time for them to get freshen back up and hit the road again, and I think that we can be a lot better race team and a lot more focused with the week off.
Well, you got that weekend off after a big win Saturday night in Bristol. Steve, thanks for the time. Congratulations on the win. We'll see you Labor Day weekend in Atlanta.
Anytime, guys.
Interesting stuff from Steve. Ray, you mentioned the word communication earlier. There was a big communication discussion right there.
Yeah, and it's not easy when you have got a driver like Kyle Busch, who right now is a big star and is doing a lot of things. A guy like Steve Addington has shown good wisdom to pull that guy aside, and it's hard to go to those guys and say, hey, look, I need more of your time. I need to better communicate with you to get these cars better for you. And I know, because I've had to have that conversation, and when you're having that conversation with a big star, it's a little bit hard.
Here we are, we're looking at not only communication but combinations. Look at David Pearson, Wood Brothers, Richard Petty, Dale Inman, Ray Everham, Jeff Gordon. These guys communicated and won a lot of races together. Are we going to see that with Kyle Busch and Steve Addington? I think so.
You're going to see it if he can get his attention as soon as he gets out of that car and gives the same time to his crew chief that Jimmy Johnson gives to Chad Knaus. And I'm sitting across from the guy that would put a driver in a headlock until he got the information he wanted. And here's the point. If Kyle Busch gets in that Nationwide car and runs 200 or 300 miles and then comes back and tries to give the same feedback, there's no way it's going to be as clear after the fact, because he just ran 200 or 300 miles in that race. He's consumed by that race. He needs to give that time the moment he gets out of practice.
Well, we used to, believe it or not, when Jeff got so popular, it was hard because it seemed like he was always running here or there. We gave him a tape recorder and said, look, just talk on your way to an appearance, or and then we'll come back and talk about those things. And the one thing that Jeff Gordon did realize about halfway through 1998, when we were struggling, we weren't communicating, we weren't doing a good job. We sat down. It was a little bit heated, but we realized neither one of us were doing a good job communicating. He sat down and made sure that he gave me what he wanted. I made sure that I gave him what he needed, and we went on and won 13 races that year.
It worked.
Pretty impressive, yeah. It's being communicated to me that it's time for a break. Up next, our Hot Lap segment. We'll talk about the new Bristol versus old, among other things, on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable. On Tuesday's NASCAR Now at 5 Eastern, among other things, a look at Scott Speed, the newly married driver. And the set heads will be happy. Boris is along. That's Tuesday, 5 Eastern, ESPN 2. And here we go with Hot Laps, our discussion of some relevant topics in racing from the past weekend or so. The Bristol racetrack. Some race fans have talked about not liking the racing at the new Bristol since it was renovated, saying there's not enough crashing and bashing to suit them. Tony Stewart said that people who, let me get this straight. Tony Stewart says those people must also believe pro wrestling is real. 11 cautions for 76 laps on Saturday. Did that do anything to ease the concerns of the more wrecking crowd?
Pro wrestling's not real, Randy.
I'm done.
I took that from a quote sheet. I'm serious. Did 11 cautions for 76 laps Saturday do anything to ease the concerns of the we need more wrecking crowd?
Yeah, probably not. It was certainly a different race, and it had a little bit of a different trend during the middle portions of the race when things always seem to get exciting, and then there's some retaliation. And the reason why is the walls moved back. And honestly, guys, what prevents a driver from going faster? The wall. You move the wall back.
They still hit it.
And they still hit it. But the fact is, the old track, you held your breath off the corner every lap.
Absolutely right.
And this allows you a little more comfort.
Excuse me, they're going around a half-mile track in 15 seconds. It didn't look like they were comfortable to me.
I said a little. I said a little more.
Since they reconfigured the racetrack, it's been an average of 5 less cautions per event. And that's something that is probably not a good thing if you're having a shot every time there's a caution now. I remember guys used to do that.
Well, you know, Randy, you look at, there aren't as many cautions, but there's some great racing.
There is some good racing.
Side-by-side racing, which Bristol used to be follow the leader. Cars would be strung out, 40 or 43, nose to tail, and you had to knock a guy out of the way or he'd have to slip up. And now you're seeing side-by-side racing all the way through the pack.
Car owners might like it, right? I mean, car owners definitely like it. The drivers like it. It gives you an option. I mean, my son won a race there, and it's just phenomenal to race at Bristol. Like you said, from first to last was 0.3 of a second qualifying. Put all those guys all together. You better look out, guys.
I saw 4 wide one time, and I didn't think that was possible at Bristol.
I didn't think they'd make it either, right? And,
was that a highlight?
It was a highlight, all right. Next topic. My opinion, you guys react. Kyle Busch has worked hard on and is figuring out the celebrity thing. We know he's a great racing driver. He's been criticized for the way he expresses his opinions sometimes. I think that the more that Kyle continues to figure out the celebrity thing, the more dangerous it makes him to his competitors. Agree or disagree, and why?
I agree, and you know how I feel about this. I think Kyle Busch is a great and talented race car driver, somewhat of a prodigy, and I get really mad when everybody gets all over him for showing emotion. That's what we need. That's what we ask for. NASCAR's been accused of having drivers that are too vanilla. Kyle Busch isn't. He's emotional. He doesn't like to lose. It's okay. But that kid is working hard on changing his personality. Hey, look, I'm older than I want to admit, and it's hard for me to do that. And this kid is doing it. He knows what he has to do to become a champion. He is going to be dangerous to his competitors.
Can you say cool off? That's all you have to do is cool off and don't spout your mouth off. I've been there. Delano Harvick stood there many a times and just give me the X. It changed my thought. So I didn't say what I probably should not have said. It gives me just a little time to think about it.
Yeah, Kyle Busch is going to be fine as long as he's not preoccupied with having to change. I mean, he's in the battle for his life. He's trying to make the chase. As long as it doesn't affect how he operates on the racetrack, he's fine.
Up next on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable, a look back at Friday night's action from Bristol with the NASCAR Nationwide Series, and a look ahead to this weekend's feature event on the road course in Montreal.
NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot. Visit HomeDepot.com. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. And in part by Chase. Introducing Chase Sapphire Card. Unlimited rewards, unbelievable experiences.
Couple quick notes. Jimmy Johnson's donated $150,000 along with his wife Chandra in grants to 4 Charlotte area schools. Roush Fenway Racing says Fastenal will sponsor Carl Edwards for 15 Nationwide Series races next year. And Mike Wallace has taken over as driver of the 0-1 car in the Nationwide Series after Danny O'Quinn left the team. Wallace says they're going to run all the races and run all the race, and are working on finding more backing. Should Mark Martin have done the bump and run on Kyle Busch Saturday night? Most of you say, yup. But again, as I stated earlier, and please don't take this the wrong way, but, Mark has to look in the mirror after it's all done.
That's right.
So there we go. Final thoughts on this particular Monday Roundtable?
I think week off for Sprint Cup, engine builders will still be working overtime, durability, and power for Atlanta.
7th through 12th in points are looking, where's Kyle Busch, where's Brian Vickers in Atlanta and Richmond?
Kyle Busch, Mark Martin, considering the pressure, really made a statement. They stepped up their game. And I tell you something, folks, I believe and have all along that they'll get in the chase. Watch out for them when they get in the chase, because they're going to be prepared.
So if Kyle gets in, that means somebody has to fall out. And that's part of the fun of watching these next 2 races, Atlanta Labor Day weekend and, of course, Richmond. This weekend, it's the Nationwide Series on Sunday. NASCAR Now, 5 Eastern on Tuesday. Boris Said and Scott Speed among the highlights. See ya.